so P23-25A, and it says cellular technologies manufactures capacitors for cellular based stations and other communications applications. Right? And the company's July 2018 flexible budget shows output levels of 9,000, 10,500, and 12,500 units. The static budget was based on expected sales of 10,500 units. The company sold 12,500 units during July. Its flexible budget and actual operating income was as follows. So we had a question from the forum relating to static and flexible budgets. So I think this is a good problem that we can see how we can describe it. Did you guys already do it and get it correct? No, not yet. Okay. So you're welcome to follow along if you want. Let's see. Now, the way we do this is we label things that are favorable with a F and unfavorable with a U. Okay, and anything that doesn't have a variance, that has a zero variance, that means the difference between budget and actual, you just leave it blank. Okay, so the first thing they want us to do is lay out the units. So that they say the actual results were 12,500 units. Okay, and then they built a flexible budget based on, let's see, well, they had 3 levels, and then they had a static budget based on expected sales of 10,500. Okay. So what we would want to do is we would want to build a flexible budget that's based on the actual number of units. Okay. So we're going to use the budgeted unit cost and the budgeted price, but we're going to flex it using the actual units. Okay. So let's see, sales revenue, budget amount per unit. Okay. So we can probably get some of that information from our additional data tables. Maybe we'll line them up here. Okay. So let's kind of take a look. Okay. So the budgeted amount per unit would be $23 for each unit that we sell. And then we would have a $13 variable cost. Okay, budgeted amount per unit. Now what they're saying is the actual results, which come from this income statement here, shows sales revenue at $294,500, variable expenses at $167,700, and the difference would be your contribution margin of $126,800. So I'm just really copying this information over into this variance analysis. Fixed expenses at $59,500 with an operating income of $67,300. Okay. Now, if I were to take, and they've already prepared it for me, so I'm going to just do one to show you how they got it. If we were to take the actual number of units, but multiply it by the budgeted amount per unit. So we'll just test it here. I'm going to take 12,500 times 23 for the revenue. Okay, that gives me 287,000. So that's basically what we're doing. We're flexing the budgeted per unit amounts, okay, by multiplying it by the actual number of units that we sold. Okay, so these per unit amounts, the 23 and 13, are budgeted on a per unit basis. Okay, but what we want to do is we want to, in a way, flex it to show what the budget would have been had it been based on the actual number of units that we sold. Okay, so that's what they're doing down here in this far right column. Their flexible budget schedule here. Okay, that's the 287. So I'm going to use those numbers there. We already went ahead and tested one. So instead of redoing all of that multiplication, we will drop that in here because they've already done that. And we'll use that as our flexible budget. Okay. All right. Then I'm going to stick the static budget in there. So the static budget was based on, up here in the second sentence, static budget was based on expected sales of 10,500 units. Okay. So really, you could actually use the 10,500 unit column that they've built here. Okay. So we'll go ahead and do that. Notice the fixed costs stay the same for both budget columns that we have over here, flexible and static. Because fixed costs do not vary with the number of units sold. Now look at our actual results. They actually came in higher with the fixed costs by 1,500. So they want us to come up with variances. What we do is we get the difference between the corresponding items in each column. So they're giving you the math up here. To get this column 2 value, you're going to subtract column 3 from column 1. Okay. So we'll go ahead and go 294,500 minus 287,500. So that's 7,000. Now think about it. What this is saying is that our actual revenue was 7,000 more than what we said we would have in our flexible budget. So that would be something that's favorable because revenue, actual revenue is higher than what we anticipated in our budget. Okay. Now the next one down, we do the same math. We're going to take variable expenses, actual variable expenses of 167,700 and subtract the flexible budget of 162,500. Okay, and that's 520. Or I mean 5,200. Now think about it. Again, that's higher than what the budgeted amount was. But because it's an expense, right, having a higher expense than you budgeted actually is unfavorable. So you would give that a U. Yeah? You see how that works, okay? Now, with contribution margin, it's going to be 1,800 more. Looks like it, right? Okay. But contribution margin is kind of along the same lines as revenue, right? If you have a higher contribution margin than what you budgeted, that would be a favorable situation. Okay. And then fixed expenses were 1,500 more than the flexible budget. And because they're expenses and they're higher, that would be considered unfavorable. So in the end, your operating income is 300 more than what your flexible budget said it would be. And anytime income is more than what you budgeted, that's a favorable situation. So I gave it a F for favorable. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, when we get over to column 3 and 5, in a way, in your mind, you're going to treat the flexible budget column as if it were the actual line. And you're going to be comparing it to the static budget. Okay? Alright? So we do the same type of math. We're going to, and it tells you what to do. Subtract 5 from 3. Subtract column 5 from column 3. Oops. Okay. So we got 46,000 more when we get the difference between the flexible budget revenue and the static budget revenue. So that's going to be considered favorable. Now it looks like we have more variable cost when we do the same comparison, right? We're comparing the flexible to the static, treating the flexible as if it were actual. That ends up being unfavorable. Okay. 20,000 more in contribution margin, so that's favorable. Now it tells me for 0 variances, you don't have to label it favorable or unfavorable. You just leave it blank. Okay, so it looks like we did 20,000 more in net income when you compare flexible budget to static budget. Now let's see. You know, in prior classes or prior textbooks and software, you would show the unfavorable as a negative and the favorable as a positive. I'm not sure if this is asking me to do that or not. So we'll go ahead and click check. And we did okay. Okay, so it's kind of just using the absolute value there, right? You don't have to. I think the fact that you're labeling it favorable or unfavorable lets the user know that it's either positive or negative. Okay. So far, so good? Mm-hmm. So why do we do this? Well, look at the labels in the variance columns, right? Especially column 4, right? Sales volume variance. So supposedly this will isolate the piece of the overall variance, the difference between the actual and the static, that relates to the number of units that we sold. You see what I'm saying? So it isolates that. Okay. And then a lot of times column 2 it would be price or the unit cost that we're isolating in column 2. So you're going to have an overall variance, and then it'll be broken down into the piece that relates to volume. So really the difference between, you know, actually doing 12,500 and having a static budget of 10,500, and then the piece that relates to the difference in the unit price and the unit cost. Okay, so let's see if we can do this. Now this is looking like the old, what we call 3-prong analysis. So you got 3 prongs here, and then it's broken down. And now we're going to be looking at the overall, right? So the operating income, the difference is 300, right? And it's favorable. So it's a little redundant here. And we need to label it. Kind of funny because it seems like they gave it away, right? It's still the same label. And over here it's 20,000. But I think it helps you see what we're doing a little better when we do that final one at the bottom. So we're going to call this the sales volume variance. Okay, so they're both favorable, and it ends up being 23,000. Okay, favorable. And 2 ways you can look at it, right? It's the combination of the favorable flexible budget variance and the favorable sales volume variance, but it's also, right, the difference between our actual results, our operating income of 67,300 actual minus 47,000 in the static budget. Oh, see, I made an input error down here. I went 23,000 when my, right, that's 300 there, so we're correct in the fact that it does add up. I just did not put the 3 where it's supposed to be, 20,300. So good, I checked it. Now I won't get it wrong. Okay. Oh, I did get it wrong. One or more of the labels are incorrect. Think carefully about each. Oh, we didn't put a label in. Okay. So that's your static budget variance. So it's peeling away layers of the onion, right? You know, a lot of times you're just going to be looking, okay, actual minus, or actual compared to static. That would be the 2,300, 20,300. But then if you want to narrow it down and see how much of it relates to the volume and how much of it relates to the unit cost, in a way, right? You could do that. And then we do it at the micro level. We're going to do the same kind of analysis for direct material, direct labor, and the overhead. We break it down that way. Okay? And you can, I'll also point out, right? See, in the first comparison up here, column 1 minus column 3, notice that we're holding the number of units constant. So none of these variances here relate to a difference in volume. Okay. Now when you come over here to column 4, okay, you don't see it right off the bat here, but if you were to click on this, you are holding your price and your variable cost per unit constant at 23 and 13, right? But notice the volume does change. Okay, so that's what we're doing. We're isolating the reasons for that overall $20,300 variance. Let's see. What was the effect on Cellular's operating income of selling 2,000 units more than the static budget level of sales? Well, because we sold 2,000 more, it increased. Right? Now, right, it increased by 20,000. Okay? Because that's the piece of the overall 20,300 that relates to the difference in volume. Okay? Let's see if we're right. Okay? You know, it would have been, you kind of could have got sucked in and put 20,300, right? But in the question it says, right, 2,000 units more than the static budget level of sales. So that level of sales indicates that you should be focused on the volume difference, which our analysis here isolated. Okay, and then I think, let's see, what is Cellular's static budget variance for operating income? Static budget variance for operating income. Cellular's static budget variance is I know it's favorable. Operating income is 20,300. Favorable, meaning that operating income is higher than expected. So this one, right, it says static budget variance. You can see the label right there. So that one is asking for the overall. Now they want you to get a little more conceptual. Let's see. Explain why the flexible budget performance report provides more useful information to Cellular's managers than the simple static budget variance. What insights can cellular's managers draw from this performance report? Choose 2 reasons why the flexible budget performance report provides cellular's managers with more information than the simple static variance. So we can choose. Okay, I'm going to rule out 2, right? Because a favorable sales volume variance reveals whether profits increase due to fewer units being sold. Actually, no. That would be more units being sold, right? Okay, so we can rule that one out. See, a favorable sales volume variance reveals whether profits increase due to more units being sold. I like that one. So I like the first and the third one so far. Let's see what the fourth one is. An unfavorable sales revenue flexible budget variance means that the sale price was, no, right? That's actually explaining what a favorable sales revenue flexible budget would be. Okay, so I'm going to take out 2 and 4, and I like 1 and 2, and we can go over 1 more time. A favorable sales revenue flexible budget variance means that the sale price was higher than planned. That's true. Okay, and then just make sure they didn't mix them around in your second. It's still the same 4 options, but let's see. We liked 4. An unfavorable sales revenue flexible budget variance means the sale price was higher than planned. We didn't like that one, right? Let's see. A favorable sales volume variance, right, more units being sold. We did okay? Alright. Any questions so far? Okay. So this is kind of what happens when you've set a budget, and then you're going to compare what you actually did to the budget at year end or at month end or however often you do it. Okay? Okay, these variances suggest that the marketing department did a good job. Right? I would tie marketing to the number of units you sold. So if you sold more units, probably means that you marketed good, and then you can give bonuses, right? You can, if you can break it down this way, then you can say, oh yeah, the marketing department did this much more than we expected. Okay, reward them. Okay, and it says they sold more units than expected and sold them at a higher price. So yeah, maybe marketing can tie in with the price too. If you can get a higher price for what you sold. Question.